Takashi Gotoh. He is an assistant professor of Mejiro University, a member of the board of directors of Japan Dyslexia Research Association, and a speech-language hearing therapist in Japan as well. His research subject is the visual function, visual perception, and visual memory in Japanese children with developmental dyslexia. So today, he will be presenting on the word retrieval abilities in Japanese children with developmental dyslexia. Let's put our hands together to welcome him.
It is a great honor to be able to speak to you today. In this presentation, I'd like to talk about word retrieval abilities in Japanese children with developmental dyslexia. A word sound retrieval deficit theory is hypothesized as a cause for cognitive disorders, which is a factor for developmental dyslexia. Many researchers have examined the word sound retrieval abilities of children with developmental dyslexia using object and color naming tasks in discrete conditions. It has been reported that in the task of naming an object or color, children with developmental dyslexia showed lower number of correct answers and longer reaction time compared to children with typical development. However, previous studies have not sufficiently evaluated the vocabulary size of the children being studied. Furthermore, there have been reported of a coexistence of spoken language developmental disorder among children with developmental dyslexia. Based on the above, the possibility that word sound retrieval ability are involved in the development of spoken language cannot be denied. Furthermore, children with typical developmental dyslexia without spoken language developmental disorder may not show a lower score in the picture naming tasks. In this study, a picture naming task was conducted to examine the word sound retrieval abilities of children with two types of developmental dyslexia: a typical Japanese-speaking group with developmental dyslexia, but no spoken language developmental disorder, and a group with developmental dyslexia accompanied by specific language impairment. Next, I'd like to move on to method. In this part, I'm going to talk about participant, procedure, and analysis. The participants with developmental dyslexia comprised 28 students who visited an institution designated to providing support for children with learning disabilities and ranged from 3rd to 8th grades. There were 19 children with developmental dyslexia, DD, and 9 children with developmental dyslexia and specific language impairment, DD plus SLI. The participants with typical development, TD, comprised 80 children from 3rd to 8th grades who attend a regular class. All three groups were matched for chronological age. The children in the developmental dyslexia group, DD, met the following three conditions. Number 1, general intelligence was within the normal range. Number 2, the achievement level of reading and writing was -1.5 SD below compared with children with typical development. Number 3, causes for difficulty of reading and writing were likely deficit in phonological ability, visual cognition, and automatization. The children in the developmental dyslexia with specific language impairment group, DD plus SLI, comprised children who met the DD condition as well as the condition of spoken language developmental disorder. This slide showed intellectual and vocabulary science findings in the 28 children with developmental dyslexia. The orange bar graph shows the result of children with developmental dyslexia, DD, and the green bar graph shows the result of children with developmental dyslexia and specific language impairment, DD plus SLI. DD group scored 85 or above in the VIQ or PIQ of risk third, or in the VCI or PRI of risk fourth. On the other hand, DD plus SLI group scored 85 or above in the PIQ of risk third, or in the PRI of risk fourth, but below 85 in the VIQ of risk third, or in the VCI of risk fourth. There are significant differences between the two groups in the VIQ of risk third or VCI or risk fourth, FIQ of risk third or risk fourth, and the score of the standardized comprehension test of abstract words. The result of reading or writing findings, chronological findings, automatization findings, and visual cognitive findings were not significantly different between developmental dyslexia group, DD, and developmental dyslexia and the specific language impairment group, DD plus SLI. Therefore, results of all 28 children are shown. In the standardized test for assessing the reading and writing attainment of Japanese children and adolescents, they scored below -1 SD mean Z-score in reading and writing accuracy in the katakana and kanji words. Further, they had a duration time of longer than +1 SD mean Z-score in reading hiragana and katakana words, hiragana and katakana loanwords, and sentences in the reading fluency tasks. They scored below -1 SD mean Z-score in the number of correct answers in the non-word repetition task and word repetition in reverse order. The time it took to correctly answer the word repetition in reverse order was +1 SD mean Z-score or longer. The duration in the rapid automatized naming task, LAN, was +1 SD mean Z-score or longer. Further, they had a score of below -1 SD mean Z-score in the copy task and 30-minute delayed recall task in the Ray oscillate complex figure test. The participants with typical development TD scored at least -1 SD or higher than the mean in all of the tests of Raven's colored progressive matrices, the standardized comprehension test of abstract words, kanji writing task, and reading fluency tasks of standardized tests for assessing the reading and writing attainment of Japanese children and adolescents. Children scored within +1 SD only the reading and fluency tasks, showing that the general intelligence and spoken language development were within normal range, and they did not have any delay in reading and writing attainment levels. In this study, color naming task and object naming task were administered to the participants in discrete conditions. Color naming had 10 tasks, 10 colors: green, yellow, black, purple, red, white, blue, yellow-green, beige, and navy blue were selected from the test of lexical processing in aphasia, TLPA. Each stimuli size was 5 centimeters by 6 centimeters. As a side note, preliminary research with 12 typically developing children aged between 3 and 6 years was conducted in advance, with a mean correct response rate being 79.2%. We counted the number of correct answers within 10 seconds. Object naming had 100 tasks. 20 nouns were used in the Standard Language Test of Aphasia (SLTA) naming task, and 80 words were used in the Supplementary Test of Standard Language Test for Aphasia (SLTA-ST) naming task. The stimuli was monochrome line drawings, and its size was 10 centimeters by 10 centimeters. We counted the number of correct answers within 15 seconds. In the study, the number of correct responses and reaction time in the reading and naming task were analyzed, with the number of correct responses and reaction time of each task being compared across the developmental dyslexia (DD), developmental dyslexia and specific language impairment (DD plus SLI), and typical development (TD) groups. For analysis, a one-way ANOVA was used. Bonferroni multiple comparison test was used when the main effect was found to be significant in a one-way ANOVA. This shows the result of the Next, I'd like to move on to result. This shows the result of the color naming task. The red bar graph shows the result of children with typical development, TD. The orange bar graph shows the result of children with developmental dyslexia, DD. And the green bar graph shows the result of children with developmental dyslexia and specific language impairment, DD plus SLI. There was no significant difference, neither correct response nor reaction time, on the color naming task between the three groups. This shows the result of the object naming task. In the object naming task, a significant difference in correct response was found among the three groups. When a multiple comparison was conducted to examine the difference among the groups, the significant difference was found between the TD and DD plus SLI groups, and between the DD and DD plus SLI groups. However, there was no significant difference among the three groups in terms of reaction time. I'd like to summarize the main points of results. In the study, there was significant difference among the three groups only in the correct response on the object naming task. In contrast, there was no significant difference about correct response and reaction time on the color naming task, reaction time on the object naming task among the three groups. Next, I'd like to move on to discussion. First, I'm going to talk about word sound retrieval disorder theory on Japanese children with developmental dyslexia. In the study, the typical developmental dyslexia group DD did not show a lower score in either the color or object naming tasks. This supported the result of the study by Gotoh et al. That typical case of DD did not cause issues in the accuracy of word sound retrieval abilities. Previous studies have consistently reported that the number of correct responses in the object naming task was lower among children with developmental dyslexia compared to children with typical development, TD. Snoring et al. Pointed out the deficit with the activation of phonological representation toward pictures as a cause for this. The typical developmental dyslexia group, TDD, showed a phonological disorder in the result of the no-word repetition task and word repetition in reverse order, although they did not show lower scores in the color naming nor object naming tasks. On the other hand, the developmental dyslexia and the specific language impairment group DD plus SLI showed lower scores in the object naming task. Gotoh et al. Examined the word sound retrieval abilities of children with developmental dyslexia in a verbal fluency task and stated that spoken language development was involved with the verbal fluency task scores. In this research, the score of object naming task is likely to be related with development of spoken language. Issues with the development of spoken language, in particular with vocabulary, are believed to impact the decline in the word sound retrieval abilities of the DD plus SLI groups. Oishi et al. Conducted a color naming task with 7 children with developmental dyslexia, DD, and all of 7 children with DD showed lower scores in the color naming task compared to children with typical development. Oishi hypothesized that the degree to which the semantic network is accessed in the color naming task is lower than that in the object naming task, and that the phonological representation had to be retrieved directly from the phonological lexicon. However, we found the children with developmental dyslexia whom Oishi et al. Reported showed specific language impairment in her article. In our study, DD plus SLI group and not just the DD group showed normal scores in the color naming task. Based on this finding, we believe that DD group and the DD plus SLI group did not show lower score in the color naming task. Next, I'm going to talk about the relationship between the reaction time of the picture naming task and LAN, rapid automatized naming. In previous studies, it was reported that children with developmental dyslexia showed a longer reaction time in a single picture naming task compared to children with typical development. However, no significant extension in the reaction time was found in either the color or object naming tasks. On the other hand, the children with DD and DD plus SLI who were examined in this study showed longer duration in LAN. There are serial condition and discrete condition in the format of the naming tasks. In previous studies, only serial LAN is related to reading because both involve serial processing and oral production of the names of the stimuli. Additionally, increasing the number of items to be accessed and produced in a LAN task in object and digit naming results in an increase in the difference between normal readers and children with developmental dyslexia. Therefore, we believe that the reaction time of the picture naming task was influenced by format of the naming task, and children with developmental dyslexia did not show a longer reaction time in the picture naming tasks in discrete condition. I'd like to summarize the main findings of this study. Picture naming task in discrete condition was conducted to examine the word sound retrieval abilities of Japanese children with developmental dyslexia. Picture naming connects with the spoken language development, and Japanese children with typical developmental dyslexia without developmental language disorders may not show a lower score in the picture naming tasks in discrete condition. This is all for my presentation. Thank you for your attention.